Hey folks, no stream today, woke up feeling sick, you know how it is. Hardest job in the world. Well, not as hard actually as the job of the 12 jurors who just acquitted Daniel Penny of negligent homicide for his, now, is it legally murder? Apparently not, but I'll say it, murder of Jordan Neely, sue me for telling the truth if you will. Not an outcome I'm especially surprised by, obviously one I'm disappointed by. Here, take it away. NBC News, give us the blurb.
Where just a short time ago, a jury has found Daniel Penny not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. This related to last year's subway chokehold death of Jordan Neely.
Yeah, you may remember that. Now, this verdict comes after a judge threw out the most serious charge against the former Marine on Friday after the deadlocked jury failed.
It's a former Marine, a white man, no less, killing a mentally unwell black man, homeless black man on the subway. The deck was stacked. Look, the facts of the case are pretty clear. There's literally video, at least, of the second half of the not legally murder that I'll still call murder. Jordan Neely, a black man, not mentally well, did routines on subway to make his money, homeless guy, New York City, a lot of homeless guys there, as I've been told. I've never been there myself. I grew up in LA though, so I'm certainly familiar with homeless people, and I'm not one of those, I'm not one of those liberals or whatever who will lie to you and tell you that homeless people are every single one of them is like perfectly harmless and unthreatening. Like in reality, obviously a lot of homeless people, in addition to being repellent by virtue of reminding us of the gross inequity of our society, and often by being stinky and unpleasant to look at on account of the fact that they're obviously suffering and there's nothing you can do about it. Like you can give them some money, but it's not going to fix the underlying systemic issue. In addition to all of that, sometimes homeless people are belligerent, violent, irrational. This happens. This is real. We can acknowledge that. Jordan Neely was belligerent, irrational, even to an extent violent. He was throwing things at people on the subway. No witness report indicates that he attacked anyone. I mean, you could argue that throwing stuff at somebody is attacking them. I would say it kind of depends on what you're throwing at them. If you're throwing a wad of paper at somebody, I think calling that an attack is pretty dishonest. Obviously, if you're throwing like a pipe wrench at someone, like, yeah, okay, you can really hurt someone like that. Daniel Penny tackled him, put him in a chokehold, held him in the chokehold for 6 minutes, the last minute of which Jordan Neely was completely limp. He was dead. He was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Look, again, I'm not going to like namby-pamby this, right? Like attacking Jordan Neely for being belligerent, aggressive, loud, threatening on the subway, I don't necessarily think that's a morally wrong thing to do, given some circumstances. For example, if there was a crazy homeless guy yelling on a subway and he was throwing things and he was being belligerent, yelling and saying like, I'm not afraid to die, that kind of thing. If you like football tackled him because you felt threatened, I really wouldn't hold it against you. It sucks. I'm not saying that's like a fair situation. I'm not even necessarily condemning Jordan Neely in this hypothetical for the mental breakdown. Being homeless is, never done it myself. It looks difficult. I gotta say, it doesn't look very easy. Gotta wear on you, I mean, you gotta think like the average pampered modern person, right? I mean, people are freaking out because they're dropping their morning bagel on the ground, cream cheese side down. I can't really blame a person for losing it a little bit if they're homeless. Anyway, if you football tackled a guy who was being, belligerent like that, can't necessarily blame you. I mean, a person could become a threat at any moment, a drawn knife or gun, you never know. And it's not as dangerous a world as conservatives want you to believe it is, but it is still fundamentally a dangerous world. I understand that. And if Daniel Penny had tackled Jordan Neely and Jordan Neely had hit the back of his head against the metal poles that you hold on to in the subway and had died right there from a traumatic brain injury, I think that would have been a tragedy. But I think that ultimately, depending on the facts of the case, you could acquit Daniel Penny fairly for that, because the action that he took in what he perceived to be self-defense was, I think, in that case, potentially legitimate, and the death wasn't really his fault. It was circumstantial. The action that Daniel Penny took, you could argue perhaps a degree of negligence, but I would say that, past a certain point, there's only so much responsibility that you can take for the outcomes of you football tackling a person for a legitimate reason, and the football tackle leading to them being, killed via concussive impact. But all of those are, or I suppose this hypothetical is one in which the action taken against Jordan Neely, the physical action, was short, perfunctory, and proportional to the response. Jordan Neely is being threatening, so you respond by tackling him. A 6-minute chokehold is not that. It's like the difference between if a person is menacing you at a bar, like getting really up in your face, and you throw a punch at them. Technically, you're committing battery, but I think that in a lot of cases, people would understand that you're acting out of a perceived need to defend yourself. A person getting up in your face could literally at any moment attack you. So if they're getting really aggressive and really like up in your face, like, yeah, you can deck them. I think in most cases you would be, you wouldn't even be acquitted. I think the cops would show up there and go like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Kind of, again, depends on the circumstances. Cops not known for being very reasonable. Even if you punched a guy, like he was getting up in your face, you punch him and he stumbles backwards, hits his head in the corner of a billiards table and, goes down for forever. Again, it's tragic, but life can be like that, right? However, if you punched a person and they stumbled back onto the ground and then you got on top of them and kept punching them in the face over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until they're faced with a bloody pulp and they died from that, that would probably get you arrested. And I think in a fair world, and I think in the world that we live in, for the most part, that would get you convicted of something, at least, because you took an initial action, which was out of legitimate self-defense, and then you went way above that and escalated that to lethal force, which is exactly what Daniel Penny did in killing Jordan Neely. I think this is a travesty. I think the only reason this outcome is what it is because we don't think homeless people are human. I just think it's that. I don't think we think homeless people are human. I think that we still live in a deeply racist society. I know, extremely hot take. My apologies. Really throwing that one out there, unprovoked, but I do believe it. I believe it very sincerely. There are a lot of demographic factors here which, if changed, would have altered the outcome of the case. If all of the behavioral elements had been exactly the same, like all the behavior down to the verbiage had been identical, but Jordan Neely was a white Marine veteran freaked out in the subway, and Daniel Penny was a homeless black man who, out of perceived self-defense, chokeholded him for 6 minutes, the last minute of which he was completely limp until he was dead. I think, to say the least, I don't think criminally negligent homicide would have been the top charge. I think that Daniel Penny would have been convicted for murder in that case. I think it would have been a conviction. I think it would have been a sweep. And I think that it would have sparked outrage all across the nation in the other direction. The idea of a black homeless man choking a Marine veteran to death, I think that it would have terrified people. It would have been weaponized for years as an example of the threat homeless people present, would have been used to justify billions in police funding across the country. Probably would have led to a lot of homeless people being killed by vigilante murderers. That happens pretty often. News doesn't really cover it, but we don't think homeless people are human, so at least that's consistent. But that's not the world we live in. The world we live in is one in which Daniel Penny was the white Marine veteran, and Jordan Neely was the mentally unwell black homeless man. So what are you going to do? We keep creating these problems for ourselves. American cities are, for the most part, shitholes. It's not even a Democrat or Republican thing. It's just a lack of basic civic infrastructure and a willingness to allow problems like homelessness to metastasize and worsen. Our hyper-individualism has morphed and mutated into something that has created a serious collective problem for everyone. As it turns out, humans only made it this far in the evolutionary ladder because we were willing to pool our resources and cooperate. There are many things that you just can't do as an individual, from the building of our skyscrapers to our roads to our civic infrastructure in all of its forms, healthcare, transportation. These things can't be done as individuals. They have to be done in group form. That's not even a political message, really. I don't think that's just a fact of the world. You can be a communist or a fascist, whatever you believe. These are facts and you have to acknowledge them. Homelessness is a collective social problem. That is the reason why there is more homelessness here than in basically any other part of the developed world. That is the reason why homelessness has and continues to skyrocket. We are getting more and more homeless people every single year. It's getting worse and worse, due in large part, I think, to increased cost of living. A drug epidemic, fentanyl, of course, has caused this to a large degree. The worsening of widespread psychiatric issues, untreated schizophrenia. There are many things that cause this. And of course, once you're caught in the cycle of homelessness, it's quite difficult to break out. We know how, of course, to address homelessness. There are countries that have done well to significantly reduce it, Finland being a core example. Housing first homelessness policies, where you provide them, first and foremost, a safe, clean place to live. It doesn't have to be luxurious. It doesn't have to be large, but they have to have their own address, and it has to be safe. But we can't even provide them that. And if we did provide them that, it would be better for everyone. Look, speaking purely selfishly, okay, as a well-to-do, genteel Westerner, I would like to walk around my American cities without being reminded constantly of the inequity that our society just mandates, You know, I don't think anyone, maybe some sadists, but I think for the most part, people don't enjoy seeing homelessness. I would much rather homeless people be, I don't know, off the street, and ideally in a fashion where there is a potential for them to recover somewhat, live a better life. You know, I know for a lot of people, they want like a street sweep. You know, they just want homeless people to be put in camps. That's what Donald Trump has advocated for. Homelessness camps outside the cities, of course. You know, I presume journalists won't be allowed in there, and the smokestacks will be for their bakeries that they use to feed the homeless. This is a fixable problem. Not only is it fixable, it's a problem which, if fixed, would benefit everyone. The money we would put into addressing homelessness would pay back dividends in the lowered need for carceral programs, policing, if we could ever bear to lower the police budget. And I know those pigs would riot if we touched a single dollar of the billions we give them so they can sit around playing Candy Crush and do nothing. So you know, the billions we spend on police so they have the tools they need to turn their sirens on for the 3 seconds they need to run a red light at 2 a.m. And then turn it off as soon as they've made it across the intersection. Yeah, I know. I'm sure it costs a lot of money to keep that. The taxpayer dollars need to keep flowing, but we could save a lot of money by addressing homelessness. And keep in mind, I'm speaking purely from a selfish perspective. I'm not even asking you to be a humanitarian about it. It's just irrational to treat the homeless this way. Even if you didn't give a damn about them, it's just objectively worse for everyone. But that's the history of I guess, not just this country, but of oppression in general, right? It's better to make the world worse for everyone as long as it makes it even more worse for the people you don't like. White racists will accept lowered standards of living for all Americans as long as it hits black people the worst. Worse welfare, worse food stamps, worse transportation. Cut up our beautiful American cities with interurban highways as long as it divides the neighborhoods properly. Cut up our beautiful Los Angelian transit system, because cars cost money and trams don't, so people can use the trams even when they're poor, get from rich neighborhoods to poor neighborhoods and back. It is particularly bad here. You know, for a country as wealthy as America, there's no excuse at all, of course. If you see homelessness in, I don't know, any, the Philippines or whatever, and by the way, I'm no expert in the Philippines. My understanding is that their situation is very different with regards to their treatment of the homeless. Not necessarily good, but, well, I don't think the median rent cost of a apartment in the Philippines is $2,000 or whatever the hell the average is in the United States these days. Probably not $2,000 for a single bedroom apartment, but for a 2-bedroom, who can say? Probably I could if I Googled it, but I don't want to. I'm ranting right now. For the amount of wealth we have, it's a blight. It's sickening. I would encourage everyone to look at this not only as an individual travesty of justice, which again there are many of in American history. They happen every day. But as a indicator for the worsening of our society. I recently put out a video called America is a Sick Country, or something to that effect, which talked about this prior to the acquittal of Daniel Penny. And that basically is the point. This attitude kills all of us. Say you don't care about the homeless at all. Just pretend. I do, but pretend that you don't. You know, the average American doesn't. Put yourself in their shoes. Everyone's life is made worse. The gutting of our downtown areas, the urban blight, the lack of safety, windows getting broken in, inequality, inequitable income and opportunity leading people to turn to crime. And that is, by the way, the strong indicator for crime. Economic inequality. Economically equal areas have, on average, less crime. Certainly less crime like vandalism, car break-ins. Now you have to, in San Francisco, you'll leave your car windows rolled down to indicate to would-be car break-in thieves there's nothing to take there, so they don't break your damn windows. Everything is getting worse everywhere. No matter how much money you put into the police budgets, you won't fix it. No matter how much rent costs go up to try to exclude poor people from downtown areas, you won't fix it. There's nothing you can do. You can implement anti-homeless architecture, hostile architecture, wherever you want. Rip park benches up so everyone can't sit anymore. Don't build parks anymore, you know? Well, who cares? Children wanting to play outside? No. It's too dangerous and scary, and there are needles everywhere. Don't let them. Make everything worse for everyone. You're never going to fix this problem. We know what fixes this problem. Investment, infrastructure, but people won't do it because they don't want their tax dollars being taken from overinflated police budgets. They don't want their tax dollars, well, they don't want to take it at all, but if they are going to be taken, they want it to go to stupid pigs squatting in their squad cars, doing nothing, fixing nothing. We know what brings this problem down, and no one wants to do it. And so we elect politicians like Gavin Newsom or Eric Adams, who are monstrously cruel to homeless people, the problem worsens further because we're not addressing any of the actual causes. We're just chasing short-term dopamine hits that we get from breaking up homeless camps, which apparently this is incredibly satisfying to Gavin Newsom, who has participated personally in the breaking up of these homeless camps. By the way, he's done it for photo ops. I can't imagine. I mean, you're literally going after the most desperate poor people in the country and stealing their stuff and then bragging about it. It's insane. Anyway, it's a cultural problem. Much like our dehumanization of prisoners, the same attitude that here in America makes the idea of providing air conditioning for prisoners whose prisons reach well over 100 degrees in the summer laughable. The same America, which contains a state called California, where recently, by a decent majority, Californians voted to maintain the legality of slavery of our prisoners. It all boils down to the dehumanization of these people. And if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. You always think you're so different from them, but you're 2, maybe 3 bad days away from joining them. You know, maybe you have a mental break. I've seen you people, you internet people, you're not mentally well. None of you are. I've been on Twitter. You can't hide what you are from me. You people freak out at anything. It wouldn't take anything at all. You could join them on the streets. You don't have the money. You don't have the temperance. Everyone thinks they could work their way back up. You can't even get a goddamn job at McDonald's anymore without wading through a sea of upload your resume, input all the identical information from the resume. Or our AI bot manager has determined that of the 5,700 identical-ish resumes that we received, yours was not one of the preferred ones. You know, a lot of these job postings are fake anyway. They keep them open to make it look like the company is growing. Makes the stock price go up. Just have some damn sympathy. If not for the homeless, then for the poor, genteel, urbanite Americans who have to walk around downtown Seattle and be reminded of homelessness whenever they walk by it. Seriously. Even from a selfish perspective. There's a correct answer to this. It's empirically correct. It's not even just morally correct. It's better for everyone. Done rambling. Have your segment, you pigs.